All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your short break. We are here and back for round number 8, the final round of Swiss here at our 10K Modern Showdown in Chicagoland in beautiful Illinois. I am in the booth once again with Corbin Hostler here to bring you the final round of Swiss. And I mean, you see this a lot in tournaments. It does all kind of come down to the wire here. It's make or break time. But I mean, there's some weird breaker math going on and stuff like that too. So the players playing here today, there's still a lot on the line. And, for one of these players, maybe with some leaderboard considerations as well. But, I think we're looking at pretty clear win and ends for all the players we're going to be watching here. As, again, we are going to be building the rest of our top 8 after this round, last round of Swiss. And then we will actually be watching all 3 rounds of top 8. We're watching the quarter, semis, and finals all today as well. So going to bring you the conclusion of the tournament. We will be crowning a champion and, of course, another member of the 2024 Energy Championship as well. And this is the last opportunity to do it. So these unqualified players, this event and the event tomorrow, this is the last weekend you can qualify for that event. And of course, the last weekend you can get any points for the MVP race. I know Connor was posting about that, but there's a lot of players in the race as well, trying to get free entry to all of the events next year. And of course, punch their ticket to the Energy Championships. With that mouthful out of the way, let's talk a little bit about some of the modern we're going to be seeing. We got Matthew Giglio on the left playing Boros Energy, Jeskai dressed out on the right on the hands of Christian Valenti. Valenti, board number 32 overall, needs some points, looking to be in pretty good shape in this tournament. Talk to me about this matchup here. Again, kind of new to modern, but at the same time, stuff we've seen before. Aggro deck versus a control deck.
Yeah, so it may have been months ago now, right? One of the last NRG events, we actually witnessed Christian Valenti go very deep with a Psychic Frog deck. And got a different flavor of a control deck this time around with Jeskai Dress Down. Now, Dress Down, of course, being the namesake of the deck, a surprisingly fun little interaction piece in Modern that shuts down a lot of abilities from creatures in a way that other decks don't. Now, of course, what this deck really leans on is its ability to control the board, right? So if you're Christian Valenti, you are looking at those Wrath of the Skies. You've got Supreme Verdict in the main deck. You've got counter spells, Consigned to Memories, even Null Drifters to go with your Phages. So we've got lots of just value spells in the mid game to get you into the late game where you have the card advantage to run things over. And Dress Down ties it all up. It cycles. It does quite a bit of work. Now, Matthew, of course, is going to slam in here with the Ragavan on turn 2. And you can see Christian doesn't mind giving up an extra card here from the Solitude to prevent that hit.
Yeah, being on the draw, you have extra cards to work with. And of course, Ragavan, I think very well known its power level here. And so a play that reminds me of the Modern Horizons 2 era, but it's Modern Horizons 3 cards involved here. Again, no one drop here for the Boros Energy deck. I think it's going to be big in this matchup and as far as getting early pressure going. And the Ragavan, the Dash Ragavan there getting caught by the Solitude, going to be a big deal in this matchup as well, because it is going to really prevent any kind of early aggression. And now, this is kind of how the control deck wants to be. It doesn't want to have to be dealing with any snowballing one drops, no Oscillate Prides, no, even Guide of Souls to some extent, but Ragavan is the one that is on the battlefield here. None of that really to contend with. You're not really slipping here on turn 2, and that's really important if you're the control deck fan. And you mentioned the dress down stuff. We're kind of doing, it reminds me of old Phyrexian Dreadnought shenanigans, where you are able to, because it's a cast trigger, cast your Null Drifter for the evoke and then use the dress down to prevent the evoke sacrifice from happening. So that really kind of lets you cheat in the body, and you're just getting cards. You're getting all your cards back for your trouble. And here is kind of the card of the tournament as far as these Boros Energy decks go. Here comes the Blood Moon. Now the question is, we have some basics already in play. Do we want to counter it, or do we want to play around it? The answer appears to be counter it.
Yeah, actual counter spell. I was going to say Christian Valenti pitching that Wrath of the Skies. I think there's only 2 Wrath of the Skies in the main deck. Yeah, so that is kind of a meaningful pitch to that Solitude there. You don't necessarily want to have to do that, but man, does it worth it to have that mana up for that Blood Moon. Because even with that basic island in play, Valenti, you see, has double white cards. Is playing a red land there, which I guess, hey, the Blood Moon would have helped, would have not messed that one up. But
sure,
Valenti needs access. He's going to need that Hallowed Fountain throughout the game.
And as I was just kind of mentioning, like having the one drops really putting pressure on gives Christian that flexibility to hold up that 2 mana and be ready for the Blood Moon. Whereas the
That's right.
game looks very different if you're under pressure trying to answer the board and then Blood Moon comes down to really slam the door on things. That's just not really the way things have played out. So I mean, you're sitting pretty if you're Christian. So 4 cards in hand as buy Giganta is the best play.
Wow.
Not what you want to see if you're a fan of the Giglio and his Boros energy deck. Tough turn 4 to go through here.
Especially since this Boros energy deck has got even more, aggressive drops, like we saw the Ragavans in the main deck there, should not be lacking for plays on turn 3. So this is a pretty brutal spot, at least one would think, for Giglio, and Valenti gets to continue to develop the board. You get to sit on mana. I spot a Flage in hand that can answer a creature coming down. So, all right, another land off the top here for Giglio. I don't know if that's good or bad. I also spotted an Amped Raptor, but with no energy, it seems. So really awkward draw here.
Yeah, I think we have a copy of the One Ring. And so the question here is we didn't deploy the Amped Raptor last turn, chose to buy Giganta instead. Maybe signaling that, okay, I don't really want to trade like just 1-for-1 using all our mana with the control deck, because the edge you have, again, as this aggressive deck with cheap cards, is you can overpower the mana of these kinds of control style decks. And so not deploying the Amped Raptor, waiting till you have a spell you can pair with it and kind of go double spell, that could be part of the equation here. But also, I mean, at the same time, all your cards like the One Ring, like it's really hard to double spell with the One Ring no matter what. So if you're just trying to punch away for that card specifically, maybe you want to keep pulling the counter spells out. So some interesting pathing here, and actually going to start on Goblin Bombardment. So this appears to signal kind of going for a double spell, but I don't know if Goblin Bombardment's enough bait for Christian to interact with. Can be very annoying, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the Goblin Bombardment is only as good as the goblins you have to throw with it, or, in any creature with it. And in this case, if you can just keep the creatures off the board, the Bombardment doesn't do anything. So Valenti just lets that resolve. Looks like he's sitting on Spell Snare in hand. So whatever 2-drop Matthew opts to deploy here is not long for the stack, I think.
Well, and that's part of the question, right? Is Goblin Bombardment's deployed here? It's tempting to
countered.
use your
Okay.
spell. Yeah, okay, we are. I was gonna say it's tempting to use your Spell Snare, but with 2 mana up, you have to imagine there's a 2-drop follow-up, and there is. It's a Johnny. And so that actually would have been pretty bad to have both of those resolve if you are Christian, obviously, because we can sacrifice the cat right away, get the Planeswalker going, and that's a mess. But even just choosing which one to counter, I'd be curious to see if Christian values countering Bombardment over something like an Ajani, but we'll see. You mentioned
if he's got Flage in hand, we know, right? So I guess your thought is
kill that.
I can answer whatever creature you play. I can't answer the Bombardment otherwise. Now, obviously, Ajani is the best creature because Matthew is still left with a token. But if you're Valenti, this is okay. All right, you're still at 17, plenty of life, and that 1 mana he has open is representing another Spell Snare.
And I mean, this is also nice too, yeah. If you're Matthew, because now you can deploy the One Ring. You got Christian to tap mana on his turn. That's really what you were looking to do. And now that you've accomplished that, One Ring, the way is clear, can get that going, and that's really going to be your ace in the hole. I think that's the card that really, no matter what, all this other stuff aside, Christian would really want to not resolve. But with only Spell Snare up, I mean, there's not really anything you can do about that one way or the other.
Well, and this has been these energy decks didn't used to play the One Ring. They used to be kind of originally they were all in on the aggressive plans, and as it turned out, as people got more used to playing against that and found ways to attack the aggressive styles, you started to see more of these grindy cards show up out of the energy decks. And that's what the One Ring has now just become a mainstay of all of them. And look, Christian Valenti had done everything you wanted to do. You had navigated the first 4 turns of the game, 5 turns of the game, nearly flawlessly to keep the board clear. All you're doing is facing down one little token, and it's just one little window open for Matthew, and slams it shut with the One Ring. Like, that is, now that it's in play, I'm not sure what Valenti can do to answer it if he doesn't have just an immediate binding or answer can go that big otherwise. So if Matthew's able to untap with it, the card advantage at that point probably starts to become insurmountable once you start activating for 2 or more.
Absolutely. And honestly, it's funny. We've talked a lot today. This is kind of the theme of today. I'm picking a theme. It's kind of the 1-2 punch as here comes the March of Otherworldly Light going after the One Ring, but it's kind of the the classic names and faces change, but the classic double spell to get through the counter spells, and then the control deck has to tap mana on their turn, and then that leads the way for your ace in the hole, whatever your big thing that you need to punch through. People have been doing that against control decks for decades, and really, like I said, names and faces have changed. The cards that people use have changed, but really the formula I think here that Matthew executed on, really showing a good sensibility about how to play against control decks. And even though we did actually just get the one ring answered, it drew a card for your trouble. A little too many lands here, maybe, but a bombardment follow-up's not nothing. Question is, do we want to deploy anything else? I think we still have that Amped Raptor, right? We never
I
deployed
think there
that?
should be an Amped Raptor. I think it's also possible. Well, Flage might have come out if that was it.
Well, yeah, I think Flage can be hasted next turn, and that's maybe what we're playing around by holding it. Is like you don't want to get both creatures just immediately sniped. You have to lose some value.
Yeah, so it's definitely a lot for both players to consider here. Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, the way I think about a modern is I tell people the cards have changed, but the decks are all the same.
We're doing the same stuff.
And that's what it feels like. So here we go. Flage is coming out. Flage has been hasted with the Arena of Glory. That's been a huge part of these Flage decks that are able to pack Arena. It just is such a massive swing of life. Multiple helixes in a turn will do that.
It's funny, I think Arena is maybe one of those cards that people slept on for a while, and it's funny because if you think about the context, the other kinds of cards that people have worked with in the past, things like Unaware Battlements, or what's the other one, the Amulet plays that cost like red and white to haste stuff. Like lands that haste your creatures have been pretty good. And Arena of Glory, the Modern Horizons 3 implementation, really it's mana neutral. Like you don't pay until the next turn, whereas the other ones usually require an extra mana the turn you play your creature. That's much harder to do. Arena of Glory is an implementation that gives you haste right away, but you're mana neutral on the turn you're playing your creature has been a big deal. And in some cases, kind of being able to filter for that red and stuff like that, like that's a nice up too. That's something that's really appealing. And obviously with Flage, you're getting that extra lightning helix, massive deal. And being able to prevent, of course, some of the life gain with the Goblin Bombardment is going to matter. But I mean, Matthew really needs to get something going here because a Flage, no matter how much trickery you have with Goblin Bombardment, Flage turn over turn is going to win the game eventually.
Yeah, it sure felt like Matthew had a window back into this game. Once he resolved that one ring, was able to get a card off of it. You ended up 2-for-1 in that deal. It costs a lot of mana, but hey, you've got a lot of mana. Now, that may actually be the problem here for Matthews. Could very well end up with too much mana, especially if the next draw step misses. I think I actually spotted in a Johnny on top.
A Johnny on top? Oh, yeah. I think that's probably one of the other cards that make Matthew think, okay, is that enough? If we have
it's a lot of math on that one.
Else to work with. Yeah, you got the ping from the second cat, the ping from the first. Like, can we kill Flage with all this? Because I mean, you can't just like battle Flage in the heads up, right? Like that's just never a winning strategy.
Yeah, so if you can get rid of Flage, there's not enough cards in the graveyard for Valenti to escape it again immediately. And of course, he'll be down that Arena of Glory. Now, the problem, as we know, is that Christian Valenti is sitting on that one lone island with that spell snare that's been sitting in his hand this entire game. He has refused to put the shields down on it. And I bet you Matthew Giglio is very much aware that that could be on the table here. So you think he opted to keep the Johnny on top, draws it, and here we go. Big turn, and Matthew knows it, rolls the sleeves up.
Yeah. This is very much a critical turn, I think, for Matthew. And you called out spell snare. I mean, yeah, this island is screaming. It's screaming spell snare. The kind of the card of the weekend. I saw a lot of people leading up to the event kind of posting, looking, hey, does anybody have 3 spell snares this weekend? Seems to be a card a lot of people were having to dig out of their bulk binders after years and years of kind of being outscaled by other options. Now finding its home once again is Amped Raptor is going to come in. I think this is the big wild card here. Oh no, in Blood Moon we can't cast it. I don't know that you would anyway, but even still, just
you might have been hoping for just something, right? Because you're still staring down the spell snare. You might have just need something to spend mana on to get cards out of Christian's hand, to get things into play, to try to answer Flage, and it didn't work. And here comes a Johnny and Christian.
I think it might be Force of Negations in hand, not
spell
I think this is Dress Down, a Force of Negation, and a Flage.
Oh, wow. If we have that wrong, this is way different. And in that case, you're right. The Johnny resolves.
Yeah, that's a Dress Down. So we got Dress Down, Force Negation, and Flage, the leftovers for Christian. No spell. So we're sitting there talking all this time about spells. No spell snare, which means we get to do all this stuff. We get to flip right away, start bombardmenting, and we're going to do that. Now we get to make a cat. Is there a reason to wait on that?
Well, look, Christian, he faked out he played this around the spell snare so well. Even I thought he had it. So, but Matthew must have been thrilled.
He
I
was
think Matthew
selling
might
it.
have, yeah, I think he might have run that Raptor out there hoping to eat a Spellsnar, right? To follow up with a Johnny. And instead, you're just thrilled when it all resolves. The Raptor resolves, the Johnny resolves, the Galvanic Discharge. Well, it's at least going to hit the stack, and Christian is going to fire off Force
Yeah,
Negation.
that one can get Force Negation, and I think you very much want to. And wow, even with all that, it's too much for Matthew Giglio. The Force of Negation is going to earn a concession. Really, I think a demonstration of the power of Flage turn over turn is just too much. Even with all Planeswalker and some defense posted, it all just gets gunned down, and that's going to do it for game number 1. Matthew Giglio going to fall to Jeskai, dress down, Jeskai control, whatever you want to call it. So let's take a look at the sideboard with that, and start, of course, with the Boros Energy deck here. No splashes here. We got 4 copies of Obsidian Charmaw, 2 Thraben Charm, 2 Orm's Chance, 2 Fear Fire Foes. Wow, that's a lot. Yeah. 2 Chain to the Rocks, the Gigantic Companion, another copy of Blood Moon, and a Soul Guide Lantern. You're paired against the Dress Down deck. How do you want to adjust?
Well, that's probably a good question, right? Because we saw a lot of the effects in game 1 that you want that can go long, right? Flage is a good one. The Johnnies, of course, are huge. Now you probably can look at something like your low cost removal. If you want, you can maybe trim around the edges there. It really is up, I guess, to Matthews how he wants to attack this. But I think you probably just are decent with your plan, right? I mean, what are you looking at here in terms of the control deck? Because Valenti is just going to have a bunch of 1-for-1 removal. He's going to have more board wipes post game. So it's almost more about how you play out your cards rather than simply what's in your deck.
Yeah, I think you can make small upgrades. Things like Chain to the Rock strike me as maybe a little bit better than Galvanic Discharge. That exile matters a lot, as well as actually being able to pick off Flage without using all of your resources, I think can matter. And then, of course, the Fear Fire Foes, I believe, is there specifically for copies of the One Ring. Maybe that's something you want to reach for. Kind of a goofy card, but gets the job done. Damage can't be prevented. The keyline attacks there. Small adjustments, like I said, but really, I think you just need a stronger start. Really kind of flooded out a little too much and didn't have as much aggressive a start as you'd want. Can maybe change that in the play. Let's take a look at the Jeskai Dress Down deck, and this is by Christian Valenti. Remember, he's someone that has some leaderboard considerations as well. In the sideboard here, we got 2 copies of Deafening Silence, 2 Harbinger of the Seas, 2 Pyroclasm, 2 Subtlety, 2 Surgical Extraction, 1 Consign to Memory, 1 Dovin's Veto, 1 Supreme Verdict, 1 Teferi Time Raveler, and 1 Wrath of the Skies. The sweepers stick out to me right away. Is there anything else you're reaching for?
Well, that's a nice start if you're Christian Valenti, as you look at your sideboard against Boros Energy when you're up a game and you spot 4 board wipes you get to look at to bring in. Right. So that just in itself, right? That's just huge because that's going to add to the 3 that you already have in your main deck, not even counting all your other removal. And if you're Christian, all you need to do is just draw a mix of lands and spells and a keyboard wipe at the right moment, and you feel like you're in a good spot here. Now, obviously, Christian's going to be on the draw. These cards can be slow. Supreme Verdict costs 4 mana. Wrath of the Skies is dependent on your other resources. Pyroclasm, one of the best ones, but occasionally, if the 2 damage doesn't get there, it doesn't get there. So it's going to be a difficult spot on the draw here for Christian, but you certainly feel like if you're in his seat, you have all the answers, right? Boros Energy, most popular deck in the room, and you built your deck to beat it.
Yeah, you showed up with cards in your sideboard, a plan for the matchup, and that's going to be the most important aspect. Is even if your plan is flawed or whatever, whatever your take is, just having a plan and executing on it is really a big formula for success in the tournament. With, like I said, both these players 5-1-1, they have impressive records, and I think with a win, very likely to punch their ticket into top 8, and a lot on the line. Like I said, Christian Valenti even has some leaderboard considerations for the championship, but still, I mean, if you just win this event, you're in the championship.
Yeah, it's the easiest way to make it, right?
Yeah, exactly. You get all the money, the trophy, the glory, all of the things, the token, all the riches that come with winning a showdown here in the Energy Series.
You get to buy all the friends in your card dinner.
It was okay. So I want to talk about that for a minute. Is that a rule for you? That was a rule for us.
It's supposed to be.
People I talked to just didn't even they looked at me like I had 2 heads. They were like, I would never.
What? No, like COVID ruined some of these traditions, right? Somehow we missed a break there to pass it on to new people. It's the people in your car. It's not your whole friend group, okay? You're not trying. You don't have to go to Fogo and buy 20 people dinner, right? But it is the 2 to 3 people who made the drive.
Okay, yeah. See, we're 100% in lockstep. I bought a lot of cars dinner, and let me tell you, we took some of those like big SUVs and stuff like that. Man, I bought dinner for like 7 people before. It's tough out here, but. Anyways, turn one Ragavan. This is going to come down from Matthew Giglio. This is very much the kind of start I think he's looking for. Puts pressure on Christian right away. I mean, you see, he's thinking about his turn one play. I mean, this is such an impactful card to have in this matchup. Don't allow Christian to have that counter spell up ready to go on turn two because you didn't really have any ones available to you. Part of the power of this deck, being able to pivot back and forth. You mentioned the energy deck originally, a lot more aggressive. This deck is really designed in a more mid-range focus. You can pivot, you can grind if you want to, or you can get aggressive if you need to. That is the power of mid-range in this, archetype in Modern. And I think Ragavan really represents a lot of that power as we are going to lead on Thundering Falls, bidding for a negation.
Ragavan, probably the best possible play for Matthew there because you saw how much it bugged Christian. Matthew went down to 6 cards on the play, which means that, hey, if your early threat doesn't get there, if it just gets answered really fast, all of a sudden you're spinning your wheels on not very many cards. Now, instead, Ragavan's able to connect, and all of a sudden the game looks a lot different. Now, you're not able to really get any advantage off of the spell snare, of course, that you exile from Valenti, but it's really about the mana advantage here, I think, for Matthew. Right? You played a tap land for Christian, and now your opponent's going to have spent 4 mana before you are able to spend a single mana, and that is
exactly.
really.
I mean, it just glues together all these grindy cards too. Like we mentioned, you're able to pivot back and forth. Part of the cost of playing some of these cards that allow you to be okay grinding is that they are more expensive. They're more expensive cards. They cost more mana. Ragavan being able to solve that, big deal. And here is a Ajani, 1 mana left over. Do we have any follow-up? Gonna make a cat token, I'm sure. Only a couple cards left. Of course, has come out swinging, has Matthew Giglio. And nope, gets to bank that treasure. No follow-up. Doesn't really need a follow-up. A lot of pressure already dialed up. And already asking for a Pyroclasm is Christian. Now, a Pyroclasm, I think, is the best play here. But
yeah, like if you're Matthew, you've put everything onto the board you need to win this game. Right? You've cast 2 spells, and that's good enough. All of a sudden, Christian is on the back foot because of that. You'll make him answer it, and then you'll go from there. But not only do you bank the treasure, you kind of get to bank whatever you're doing on this turn because you don't actually have to add to the board in a way that can get punished. Now, if all you have are creatures, there's maybe not necessarily any choice but to run them out into a possible board wipe. But hey, if it was Pyroclasm, it would have come down on that turn, and it didn't, which means it's not Pyroclasm, which means a 4 mana board wipe can't come out for a while, which means a Wrath of the Skies is your next consideration. So if you're Matthew, a lot of things you're thinking through here. If you stare down the 4 cards in your hand and the distance between you and the top 8, you're trying to bridge here.
And I really like the call out of that progression there. I mean, that is very much kind of the needle that needs to be threaded, right? We talked a lot about classic kind of mid-range, even aggro versus control principles, kind of the double spell into ace in the hole spell. Well, here is like the do you overextend into sweeper or do you underextend into spot removal kind of things? And like you mentioned, kind of Wrath this guy's being on the radar could swing the math a little bit because that actually does get the treasures. So it's hard to recover from Wrath this guy specifically because you don't get to bank that mana and really go multiple spells right away. But here comes a spot removal spell, something I think you have to actually be pretty happy to see if you're Matthew. You've put a few things into play, and that's a pretty loud signal. There's no sweeper coming next turn. We're spot removing stuff right now.
Yeah, exactly where you want to be. Now, of course, it did exile, so that will remove any of that forever. And no triggers or anything that are going to come about either. So, but that if you're Matthew, like you mentioned it, right? So that tells you, okay, you're removing my things one by one. That means you're not going to sweep, which means I can add to this board now. And we'll see what he actually has to do that. But it is a flashing green light to go, add to the board.
Which, I mean, that can be part of the bait too. Like sometimes you'll see control players fire off a removal spell, get the player to extend more in, and then, whatever, maybe Supreme Verdict comes down on 4, or you actually do have the Wrath of this guys, but you're trying to get them to extend more. There's a lot of play here. There's a lot of even like mind games that can get involved with, okay, do they have a Wrath or not? What could come off the top? Like, even if you don't have it now, maybe you draw it. Like, you can't get undisciplined with it, but I think it is a green light to at least deploy something else, and you see Matthew Giglio willing to do so. Ocelot Pride going to enter the battlefield.
So we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 permanents for the left team.
Oh, we're doing this by permanent count now, are we? That's, maybe it's a better indicator than life total as to who's winning. But just a land and a passing of the turn again.
Well, it's like counting up for the Ocelot Pride here, right? So
for the
how close we are. It is a very cat-heavy board here for Matthew. Christian does have the land, just passes the turn back. Step 1, attack.
Yeah, good step 1 to have. All right, so beatdowns. Looks like that'll happen. So life gained, Oslet Pride locked and loaded for the end step. Let's see. 3 mana. I was gonna say we're reaching for some mana in Giganta. So I called out Giganta as by last game as like a pretty bad play. Here it's kind of great. You get to spend some mana that isn't susceptible to counter spells, so you're not allowing Christian to gain any ground while still just like advancing your board with the Oslet Pride, which is gonna happen. So it's still sweeper, or you're still in trouble for Christian. And Matthew got to spend a bunch of mana this turn without actually opening himself up to counter magic. Actually, a great turn there with the Giganta.
And Christian just nothing on that turn with that mana, but has the perfect follow up if you're going to be in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, he needs to have it, right? Like, this game is very over if you don't have anything. If you have no wrath, like you've bought some time, but you need to have something. And now, I mean, obviously he's not out of the woods. He needed that. That was step 1. Now you kind of need Matthew to have a weak turn. And you have to imagine he's holding something back.
Yeah, I mean, he spent his mana on Gigantha, which means he's got, I think we're probably looking at 3 or 4 cards, maybe even 5 cards in hand once he draws here. So he's going to have access to at least 4 mana, possibly 5. It is a lot, right? That was if you Matthew, okay, board wipe, first board wipe came down. We knew that was coming. Got him down to 10 life. We're able to pull a couple cards out of the hand. All right, that's pretty good. But it's all about the follow-up turn. So we'll see what he's been holding back to try to get onto the board here. Gonna untap. 4 mana.
All right. Yeah, big turn here. This is a critical one for Matthew. Oh, we're rolling up the sleeves.
Again.
I love the tell. I love the, it's time to get down to business. I love it. I love it so much. All right, Matthew, what you got? We've rolled up our sleeves. First play, Amped Raptor. I believe no energy to work with prior, so looking for 2s or less. Had a little pause there. That is a flage. Golly, these Amped Raptors will not cooperate for Matthew.
Yeah, it's a bit of a yikes there. So, but we've got more, couple cards in hand, but he was certainly hoping for something better than that.
Yeah, you see.
Also, you wouldn't have hated drawing Flage either. You'd have enough.
Exactly. It's a good card in the matchup. It's one you would absolutely love to find. And just having to exile with the Amped Raptor is not what you want to see. Oslet Pride, a fine follow-up, but not that threatening. And the One Ring, a great follow-up for Christian.
Yeah, corner turned, I think.
Certainly looking close. It certainly looks close to me. Let me get a read on Fear Fire Foes here. Deals X damage to target creature. So you actually do need a creature to target. And that might actually make that card a little bit less appealing in this particular matchup. Oh, no, not really. Because you can target your own thing, I guess. And then you still... I mean, that's goofy, but I mean, whatever. It gets the job done. But 10 is a lot. 10 is a lot to try to battle down. And if, I mean, any kind of flages or anything like that get involved in the mix, things start to slip away very quickly. Down to 9 goes Christian, below the halfway mark, but that's might be too little too late. Representing only 3 on board right now. It's a 3-turn clock with the One Ring in play. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're Matthew, you're hoping that Christian dies to his own ring.
I think that's kind of what you have to hope for, because I mean that is like a real clock. Like, he's going to take damage from this thing, and he's going to need to get rid of it at some point. The big thing that, of course, Christian's looking for to really offset that is Flage. That just immediately solves the life gain problem.
Right.
But second copy of One Ring can do so as well, but does require him to tap mana on his turn. So that can maybe you can start to look to overpower counter spells again. But I really think Giglio's more or less out of gas. I mean, not much at all from last turn.
Yeah, Flage would obviously be perfect for Valenti here, right? You've got a graveyard stacked. You'd be able to escape it later. It would clear the Ocelot Pride off the board. It gain you your life back. You'd feel pretty good about where you're at. Now, if you don't have that and you have to make a different play, well, then things get a little bit more interesting for Matthew here, because if it's not a ring, if it's not life gain, then Christian is falling down to 7 on his upkeep, and you're looking at 3 damage on board for Matthew. That's getting down to 4. And the game is a little bit interesting, even though Christian is going to have access to roughly infinite cards. But there's the one card.
Yeah, this is, I think, the one Giglio did not want to see. He gives it a thumbs up, but his insides, I think,
did he mean it?
I don't think he meant it at all. Gun down, the Amped Raptor goes, and then Flage, of course. Oh, okay. We getting froggy with the what?
Okay.
We got solid.
So we're going to
I think we're dress downing here.
Yeah. Oh,
Stop
this is
this.
sick. Evoke triggers on the stack.
Yeah. We're
Consigned to
consigning them. I
memory.
was like, wait, dress down doesn't work. So you
No,
need
but we
something
can
else. It's consigned.
yeah.
That gets both triggers, and then you get to keep both cards. And now this is just the absolute worst possible
That
turn,
was
I
pretty
think, for
sick.
Matthew.
Look
That
at
is
what a turn from Christian.
oh
Put
my
him on
goodness.
this, put the flage on the stack, put the sacrifice on the stack, flash in solitude, and then consign both of those sacrifice triggers. What a play. You cleared out 2 creatures from Matthew's board. You add 2 to your own. And just like that, the corner is turned and the door is slamming shut. What a play by Christian.
Absolutely. A massive turn for Christian. Basically exactly what he's looking for. And consign, I mean, just showing its utility off, frankly. I mean, I was sitting there like, what are we doing here? I mean, dress down doesn't work. Yeah, able to just get both triggers. And so being able to get both, that's nasty. Chain to the Rocks, he's going to get answered by Force of Vigor. All the cards running from the One Ring. Going to make that one too late to the party. Obviously, would be nice to answer Flage, but even still, we're untapping with the One Ring. Going to get 3 more cards, 4 more cards with the draw for turn. And I mean, like you mentioned, this game is closing quickly.
Yep, that'll do it. The life game making all the difference. Flage has been such a key part of all of these control decks, these Jeskai type decks, being able to turn the corner over the last few months. And you're seeing Christian Valenti get fancy with it. That was a heck of a way to play your way into probably the top 8 here at the NRG Championship Series in Chicago. We are marching towards that top 8. We're around 8 of 8. Christian Valenti, Matthew Giglio playing it out here. The finishing touches getting put on here by Christian Valenti.
Yeah, certainly. And here's okay. Now we're styling. We got the extra flage. Get to use as a removal spell, and here comes some big beatdowns. A 2-turn clock here for Christian. Nowhere close to dying to this One Ring. All things coming up, Christian Valenti, and I mean an impressive demonstration. And I really want to take this moment too, while this game is coming to a natural conclusion here, to highlight the Boros Energy deck is beatable. This is something that we've talked about quite a bit. I mean, we'll see exactly how many end up in our top 8 and stuff like that. But now we've seen it taken down by Belcher. We've seen it taken down by, this dress down deck. There's strategies that can combat it. People really are, I think, are too quick to reach for the bans and, really just as a way to solve things because there have been so many design mistakes and stuff like that. But games like this are awesome. I mean, this is so cool to watch. Okay, here's the menace. This supposedly, incredibly powerful deck that is just beating everything in Modern. And I mean, these are 2-0 victories. These are quite a demonstration. And I'm going to get a chance to talk a little bit. You are as well. I don't know why I said it that way. With Christian Valenti here in just a moment, but kind of finishing the thought out from what we've seen so far this weekend and kind of the context of Modern as it is right now. Post Nadu is something that needed to be banned. Gone. Out of here. See you later. Now people are clamoring for more bans. They're clamoring for energy bans. I've seen people talk about Flage. I've seen people talk about the One Ring. But Modern to me looks to be in a return to form. It looks to be kind of a lot like what I've always expected out of Modern over the years. And it looks like there's still a lot of metagame churn happening, and there's more work to do to really determine how problematic are these cards, how problematic are these strategies.
Well, there's certainly something to be said for Pyroclasm. Right? Like, think about that.
Okay.
We're in a format where Pyroclasm has become a key sideboard card. If I were to tell you that in a vacuum, would you describe that as a bad format? I don't think so. I think that if you are in a spot where the best deck is not being answered, but you can combat it with a simple Pyroclasm, honestly, not a bad spot to be. Because what that means, it's not about necessarily the power level of the deck at that point, right? It's about the gameplay, right? And the ability that you feel like if you are playing against it, okay, well, if I just sideboarded enough board wipes and I just sideboard enough Pyroclasms, I feel like I have agency in that matchup. Whereas something, we talked about Nadu, it kind of didn't matter what. There were a couple cards you could play, but it almost felt like it didn't matter what you did.
Right.
They would just have it, right? This is a lot more classic Magic. We can know how to play against aggressive Boros decks, right? When they're the best deck in the format. And yes, the deck is very good, and the Mardu deck is very good, but we've watched control players crush it now by just killing the creatures. We've watched combo players ignore it by just playing Goldfish, right? Like, all of these things are things that push down an aggressive deck, no matter how good it might be in the abstract or powerful it might be. If the format can adjust to it, the format can adjust. And I think we're about ready to go chat with Christian Valenti who was certainly able to adjust and just
Yeah, who
was
better
able
to
to
talk
roll
to
over.
about exactly this concept? So, Christian, as you may have just heard, we're actually talking a lot about the modern format, the energy deck, and everything around it. I
Sure.
think, you are something you have thought about, and you did a great job dismantling, I'd say, the menace in the form of Boros Energy. Can you talk to me a little bit about your deck choice for this weekend and your process leading up to that decision?
Sure. So I've actually had quite a bit of repetition with the deck, right? It's the deck that Ryan Bellamy and I actually created before Amsterdam, and it's what I played in Amsterdam as well. So
Okay.
I've been playing it for a while. Um, I, I I said this earlier in the interview. I'm not going to mislead anyone and say that it was the best deck during Nadu, but I enjoyed it. The gameplay
Right.
style. And now I think there's a good argument that it is actually just the best deck in the format, but it's a little underplayed at the moment, underrepresented, which is fair because Boros is Boros, right?
Strong.
Um, but yeah, just like what you guys were saying as I was getting set up, Boros is very exploitable. Uh,
Mhm.
it's maybe the best deck, but it is just a creature deck, and it's pretty easy to interact with those if you want to.
Well,
Yeah, and so walk me through that. Like, what is the key? What you obviously you said you worked on this deck, you kind of really developed it, played it even before the energy was the top dog.
Correct. Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how you kind of have broke open. Like, what is your plan for exploiting these energy decks? We saw some of it for sure, but is it really? I mean, just Jeskai controller?
No,
What's the secret?
there's quite a few differences. We do lean more into the control element after board, right? If I don't know how visible my sideboarding options were to you guys, but I don't have any null drifters in my sideboard or in my
mhm.
deck after board most of the time against them. It just doesn't line up very well. It's a little slow. They have a lot of extra permanents, right? A lot of extra cardboard to
Right.
sacrifice to it, so that's not really the battle you want to fight. Uh, the secret to the matchup is going to sound super misleading, but you just want to leave all of your force of negations in, because I think the mistake that a lot of people make is they treat it like it's just a creature deck.
Huh?
And if you just bring in a bunch of sweepers and a bunch of discharges and solitudes and what have you, right? The games are going to play out. You're going to kill their early creature plays, and then you're going to lose to a ring and a flage,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're not ready to fight those. So you have to. It's a little bit of give and take, right? Like I lost a couple games earlier in the day to Boros, and they can do the thing, right? I mean, it's not like the deck is invincible, but I think putting yourself cold to their top end is a mistake that I see a lot of people make. I try to leave myself a good mix, because you really need to be able to interact with Blood Moon and Ring post board. And if they get you with the creatures and you don't have the removal, then it is right. But in general, I think we have a lot of tools to kind of fight what they're doing.
Well, that's a great explanation, and also your deck, as we saw in that last game, can get kind of proactive. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
how
oh
often
yeah.
do you consign to memory two of your own sacrifice triggers
I
on the
mean,
stack?
pretty
Right, that
often,
was
right?
pretty impressive.
Pretty often, right? I mean, the name of the deck in the melee platform is Jeskai Dress Down, right? I mean, it is
Yeah,
plan A in game one against most decks is to put a gigantic creature into play on turn 3. It's much more of a tap out deck, which is why
mhm,
the construction of it is less counter spells and more force of negations, right? You guys have seen I have March of the Otherworldly Light in my main deck as opposed to Prismatic Ending because I value
yeah.
the instant speed and being always able to target a ring. So the way that I like describing the deck is it's like playing a bad Legacy deck in Modern, right? Like 10 of my cards are free or significantly cheaper than that effect should be.
Yeah. Well, it looked great there, and now
Good.
6-1-1. I think you're finished as we
Yeah,
we
I
await
was
the
looking
top
at it
eight
briefly
announcement.
before. I didn't put a ton of effort into it because I was X11 anyways, right?
Yeah.
So I had to play and
Right.
win regardless. But the way I looked at it, it looked like it was a clean cut now because the table 4 was also playing. Uh, so
Yes.
it looked like it was a clean cut. So yeah, should be 7th seed going into top 8 unless something changes, but it should be even then 8th is worst case scenario, I think.
Yeah, don't
Well,
want to speculate too hard, but I think you're looking really good. And congratulations again. I mean, I don't think we talked so much. That was a dominant performance in your on-camera match. Leading into what is very likely a top 8, and huge considerations for your leaderboard performance as well. And you
Yeah,
were pretty high on the leaderboard, but some work to do on the leaderboard could really put you in a nice seat. And this
for
is a great
sure.
time to
Yeah,
get busy
yeah.
today and tomorrow.
I kind of roughly theorize. I think I'm sitting on 42 points for the season.
Hmm.
So I like roughly theorized that I probably would need a couple good performances or an outright win, right? It didn't seem like I could
Yes, I
coast
think
into a
that's correct.
couple like top 8 losses or anything like that. But
mhm.
yeah, that was the goal, right? I did want to queue for the invitational. Uh, I went effectively 9-8, right? 9-7 at PT Amsterdam, and then I lost round 15 playing for the Pro Tour in DC. So any avenue, the Invitational, I see it as I believe first place at the Invitational, queues for the PT as well. So I'm basically just every avenue I can to try and get back onto the PT.
Well, you're looking pretty good. Like I said, this is what you have to do. This is the first step. Like you mentioned, I believe your analysis is very good and correct. Sounds like you've done your homework on everything. You've done your homework on the modern format, done your homework on the points, and you're getting paid off for it. You seem to know what you're doing, and you look to be in a good spot to watch more of you play later. And it's a deck that we certainly have our eyes on. Looks very powerful. Congratulations.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. You guys have a good one.
You too.
So with that, we will be seeing more of Christian later, as we kind of alluded to, almost certainly. And that will do it for our main feature for Round of 8. But fear not, for I believe we have a backup dialed up as well. This one, as always, is going to be something a little different. I don't know how much of either of these decks we have really seen across our tournament, and especially today on coverage. But two of my favorites, we got Ruby Storm here on your right in the forms of Edward Halb, and on your left, another favorite of mine, Amulet Titan, in the hands of John Wagner, a deck that I haven't seen too much of at all. There's Blood Moons everywhere, Harbinger of the Seas everywhere, and we're Amulet Titan. Okay. This
is great. This is great. I actually saw a couple Amulet Titan decks floating around, maybe the top 10 or so tables. So, man, the one thing about Amulet players is that, you know, they're Amulet players, which means they play Amulet.
We agree entirely. Oh, we got some pretty cards here for Edward, as we're gonna, I believe, fetch the Elegant Parlor. Gonna quickly check the splash here.
Yeah,
double. Notice the Commercial District. Okay, so Commercial District off Scalding Tarn. Gonna do some surveillance.
And here we go. There's the Storm counter. The
here
mana
we go.
Counter. We're setting up.
A disaster, maybe, if you're John. Very quickly fetching with this Arid Mesa is Edward, who I think, seeing two Urza's Sagas, unless these two players know what kind of the others ought to be, this is where deep in the tournament. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily think Amulet right away on Double Saga, but I don't really know what else you would be thinking, as here comes a mountain. It's got to be Pyretic Ritual, and John, looking intently, not what you want to see. I've been playing for long enough. Pyretic Ritual's always been good against Amulet Titan.
Yeah, is this a turn 2 we're seeing from Ruby
Storm? Oh, no, I think so. Pyretic Ritual number 2 after Ruby Medallion. Pyretic Rituals, now Dark Rituals, functionally. Glimpse the Unthinkable. All right, so now we got to hit some bangers. Manmorpho's a great start. And Wish, another good one. I think we're doing it.
Yeah, I think those probably fit the bill.
What a beep.
Yeah, just sit back, take it in, right? Especially if you're John, that's all you can do. You got these Urza Sagas. You just watch Ruby Storm combo out on turn 2. It's incredibly rare. You often don't see it until turn 3. But then we'll see if it actually ends this turn. But wow, what a draw.
What a change in this is Modern at its finest right now. We just talked about like exploiting this matchup back and forth, aggro, mid-range versus control, all this kind of stuff. All right, here you go. You're dead on turn 2. There you go. Welcome to Modern, buddy. Here you go. And Amulet can do the same thing. It's not like Amulet's innocent here. You just play a couple of Amulets and a boss man, and we're off to the races. So, at the same time, it's not even like John can sit there and really, say anything one way or the other about dying on turn 2. You're doing the same thing to people. And Modern at its finest here, as we are taking a look. 2 lands off the Ren's Resolve. Not really what the doctor ordered.
I was going to say, is this going to... we're in a lot less autopilot now. Edward's having to think about it a little. Maybe we don't get there.
I mean, if you don't get, what happened? We get one, Urza Saga comes off, and then we just sit there, and then that's tough. I think we actually are passing. I was so excited. Where's our turn 2 kill?
To go for it and not get there is, I guess maybe it's not like that bad, because you still have a couple cards in hand. You're going to have access to those lands next turn, and hey, you got to spawn out of it. But no, kind of brutal, actually. If you're Edward, you wanted to do something a little better there, and now I guess you hope that John doesn't do his thing. Now, that said, this was a pretty, I don't even know how to describe this draw, this double Urza Saga draw from John, where we don't even have any colors of mana now, but I guess we do have Amulet of Vigor, so who knows? Maybe this turn's about to be just unhinged.
Let's call it linear. It has a plan. We're going to have these things come off. We're going to find amulets, and then our opponent's going to die. And that's a fine plan. I mean, it's part of the modern day amulet takes are very based around like the Mycosynth Gardens and, having amulets and stuff like that. But now you don't really have time for that second one to come off to spend. But the One Ring can give you time. That gives you a turn. Huge play here.
Yeah, this is going in some interesting directions. We've got the classic 1 land in play plus the One Ring for John.
Yeah, the One Ring
Fascinating.
gonna give you that critical turn to get that second saga, and then we know about the Simic Growth Chamber. So 2 amulets, Simic Growth Chamber. That's quite the formula for success, and really nothing from Edward there. That's a tough place to be. As here comes the second saga. Is Amulet gonna steal this one?
This is a bizarre game, I'll say that. Now, maybe Edward felt the pressure from those sagas. I mean, maybe that's why Edward went for it on turn 2 as opposed to just playing Amulet and then try, or a medallion rather, and then trying to go for it on turn 3. I'm
Does it
not
get better?
entirely
I mean, you weren't
sure.
gated on mana, right? You were just gated on things to do.
Yeah, well, you would have got a card deeper
True.
earlier, right? So
Yeah.
so this is well, it's going to be an
I
interesting
guess you're
spot, I
somewhat gated
guess.
on mana, right? Because like you would have had your wish could grab Past in Flames, and then maybe you get a few more looks at it, and that's enough. Is that a Lotus Field?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I don't know if I've seen too much of that. That's new to me, but maybe I just missed the memo. How many of those do we have in our deck?
We're deep in the tank here.
We have 2 Lotus Fields. Wow, we did the math here. We got some couple Explorers. All right, 2 Explorers.
No lands in play. No lands in play, but we're playing Explorers, huh?
2 Explorers, no lands.
That is an Aftermath Analyst that just got drawn, by the way.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to take a look here. Yeah, we got 2 of those. We got a Lumbra, too, from the Bloom Burrow set. This is quite a look here from the Amulet deck, as here comes 4 mana off the bat. Now, the mana calculation is on paper off screen, but I know there's 4 from that Simic Growth Chamber, and I believe there was like a gajillion from Lotus Field. So I don't even 369 or whatever.
Right,
no, you only get 6. You got 6. So we had 2 left over. So we had 6, and then we played Aftermath and Analyst here.
Yeah, there's the Shifting Woodland.
Okay. So I know Aftermath Analyst has been used in like combos before. Are we doing that?
There
Yeah,
we
okay,
go.
we are. We are doing that. All right.
3
What is
sagas
happening?
and 2 Lotus Fields into play.
Well, this looks like a lot to
Triggers
me.
on the stack.
Yeah, they all enter-tapped, so that triggers all the things, including for sagas and stuff like that. So it's going to trigger the amulets 2 times each, and we do have the Summoners Pack. That's a Primeval Titan, and I'm not great at math, but that is hyper lethal.
Yeah, this seems like a lot of mana.
Yeah, we're revealing our hand. That's where the game's at. We're revealing our hand. We have a Tolaria West for a second Titan already. We have Titans out the wazoo. And yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Amulet Titan steals game number 1 off of some new inclusions. Lotus Field Aftermath Analyst kind of got to do the Splendid Reclamation kind of look and get all the lands back as a burst of mana. Very impressive.
So it did it right because, oh my gosh, they came into play. They untapped. You get to add all the mana off those Lotus Fields before you have to sacrifice anything. And you just end up with a ton of mana to keep going. Aftermath Analyst comboing off right there. All right, Edward, to the sideboard.
To the sideboard. So let's take a quick look at the sideboard here. Starting, of course, with Ruby Storm, which fizzled there on the turn 2 attempt. We got 3 copies of Abrade, 3 copies of Veil of Summer, 2 Flame of Anor to go with the 2 in the main deck, I believe. And then we have 2 Nature's Claim, 1 Alchemist's Gambit, 1 Empty the Warrens, 1 Galvanic Relay, 1 Grape Shot, and 1 Pass in Flames. The big card I see missing here, Blood Moon. Used to be a big part of the Storm versus Amulet recipe. You could just Blood Moon them on turn 2. None of that here. What are you bringing in instead?
Well, remember, this is, of course, a Wish sideboard. So you see the Wish in the main deck. So that's something Edward is going to keep in mind. I'm spotting some Abrades, and I think Flame of Honor also hits artifacts. So you probably want to max out on anything that can actually interact with the namesake of the Amulet deck. Because we saw the amulets pop off there. So that's probably where you're looking. Outside of that, you're just trying to storm. So you want to keep things nice and simple and just don't whiff when you go for it.
Yeah, I don't want to see another look, all those lands that we saw off the spells, but I think that's the real recipe. And of course, maybe be a little bit more patient. You have maybe an extra turn than you think in this matchup. But if you're Edward, I mean, really just kind of got unlucky with the cantrips there. Keep the game plan mostly the same, especially with, like I said, with no Blood Moons, you have to feel good about the matchup. With that said, let's take a look at the Amulet Titan deck. This one, of course, like I said, some stuff that I'm familiar with and some stuff that I'm excited to see work with, Lotus Field and all that jazz. We have in the sideboard 2 copies of Dismember, 2 Fire Spout, 2 Mystical Dispute, 1 Bajuka Bog, 1 Beseju Who Endures, 1 Radiant Fountain, 1 Valak the Molten Pinnacle, 1 Disruptor Flute, 1 Spelunking, 1 Force of Vigor, 1 Dread of the Elysian Grove, and 1 Colossal Sky Turtle. Not quite 15 one-ofs, but not far away either. How do we adjust for the Stone matchup?
Well, imagine we're looking at Disruptor Flute. Not a ton of options here, right? Like you're looking at your Force of Vigor can catch the Ruby Medallions. I guess the Sky Turtle can bounce things if you want to go that way. The Flute gives a little bit of interaction that you wouldn't otherwise have. But yeah, I don't want to say two ships passing in the night, but there's a lot of just both of these players trying to combo each other out of it. But also just take a look at, we talking about the main deck of John here. Spotting those Lotus Fields.
Escape Shift sticks out to me. I
Yeah.
don't know that I've seen too much of that one. One copy Escape Shift. Obviously, that pairs with your Aftermath Analyst. I assume that's the piece you need to really actually go infinite. But I mean, just wild stuff here. It really feels like we've combined what was a standard deck with the Analyst combo with the modern deck that is Amulet. And obviously, like I said, John Wagner with a 6-1 performance has done very well with it today. So, and managed to steal that game there against Ruby Storm, which, like I said, I think is on average probably like a full turn faster than Amulet. But I mean, there, like I said, a fizzle plus a pretty good draw there with the Analysts, the Explorers, the Lotus Field, was able to punch a ticket. Not too many adjustments. Like I said, there's a weird tension too, I think, between do you want Dismembers and stuff for Ral, or do you want Besejus and stuff and Force of Vigor for the Ruby Medallion? You know, it's 50-50. They're equally likely to have either. What do you do? Are you better against one or the other? Who knows? A tough, maybe you just want it all. But at the end of the day.
Yeah, and maybe, I mean, the Analysts, this deck has some fascinating numbers, right? Like 3 Razors, 2 Analysts, 2 Packs, 1 Scape Shift, right? Like this is a really, really interesting build of the deck. So maybe you can cut down a little bit on just a few of the numbers, or maybe you just try to run it back and kill them, right? If you can just make a couple of the changes and go from there without disrupting too much of your deck.
Yeah, we'll see here in a moment. Now, of course, Edward being on the play, I think is bad news for John. You maybe just want all your interaction here on the draw, and maybe you can adjust again on the play to shave some of that off and try to just, like you said, 2 ships passing the night. Maybe you're a little bit faster if you're the one that's on the play, but on the draw, I think you really kind of want to max out on any interaction that works just to give yourself that extra turn, and maybe try to hit the interactive. Interact at a critical time to maybe force a fizzle that gives you that really key window. So we'll see as these players are shuffling up here for game number 2. Remember, a win in, I think, pretty clean for these players on the line. If you're enjoying this magic, we're going to be bringing you the whole top 8 quarterfinals, semifinals, finals tonight, and we will be getting somebody a trophy as well as their ticket to the 2024 Energy Championship, which you're not going to want to miss. And so if you're watching that and you're going to want to check that out, I believe that's December 14th and 15th. Make sure you hit the follow button. It'll let you know when we go live. Make sure, of course, grow our channel and bring you more awesome magic like this. John giving his hand a good look. And I don't know if that's good or bad. You know, the Amulet players start doing math right away. It's like, okay, are we dying on turn 2? Don't love the optics there, as Edward Stoneface seems happy with this.
This is a big match, right? If you're John, you're now 1 game away from the top 8. You've been at this all day long. We're in round 8. Easy for Drake and I. We're coming in here taking over from Niall and Doomwake, who took us through 6 rounds this morning, and we got to carry you through the top 8. And after all of that,
this is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great way to spend a Saturday afternoon. Am I right? It's nice and rainy here. It's a very perfect. Looking at the rain out my window, some magic on my screen, hanging out with my friends, watching some Modern. It's a good way to spend a Saturday and a good way to start the game if you're John there with a turn 1 Amulet.
Yeah, Saga to Amulet, that's already dialing up 2 Amulets, which we saw was the key last game to really setting things off. But I mean, that Urza Saga coming off of, I don't want to say off suspend. It's what it feels like. It doesn't really do anything until it finally pops off. But, more or less when it finally reaches that 3rd chapter, that's really kind of the ticking time bomb in the game for Amulets. Now, Edward does have time before that happens, but not that much. And it's funny, we saw him really kind of put the pedal to the metal in game number 1, trying to kill in turn 2, did brick, and then ended up just kind of dying to a combos a little bit slower. See if we're going to take things slower here. As an Abrade key here, did bring those in to answer Amulet of Vigors. You called those out as particularly, these builds lean more on Amulets. Bring in the Artifact Hate. We sure did. Another Amulet. Wow.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, yeah, the Urza Saga, as you mentioned, it's basically Amulet Suspend 3. And that's, that's what it's going to look like here, because the first one goes down. The second one in hand, though, is kind of brutal, because if you're Edward, you're like, okay, well, I'll just short this first Amulet. This second one will come out, though, after the Saga, but at least it'll be down a land when that happens, right? Instead, there's another one here. Now just a single bounce lane becomes absolutely terrifying from John's side. So just like that, it's turn 3, Ruby Storm player. What's the play? You spent turn 2 not setting up your own combo. You spent turn 2 interacting, and maybe you'll get punished for it because John is very possibly setting up to be able to kill through that Abrade anyway. So, all right, huge turn here for Edward.
Yeah, we called out during the sideboarding. It's like, it's about 2 ships passing the night and then who can interact. And, taking a turn off to interact is kind of like you interacting, right? Especially if you have a follow-up that puts you right back in it, like the second amulet. It's basically like you got the time walk. And that's important when you're talking about this kind of setup. And now it's kind of like Edward's really trying to go off a turn 2 because we have to deploy our cost reducer on the same turn we're trying to combo. Now, Metamorphose does just cycle. So it's a low, it's a high ceiling, low floor card for sure. But ostensibly, you are kind of reaching for an attempted kill. And I think that this Ren's Resolve signals that. I don't know. I have to imagine.
It's possible I missed it. It's possible I missed it, but here we go. Another piece of interaction.
Wow. I think we made red-green off of Metamorphose, which is why that happened, because we already had the Nature's Claim in hand, so we couldn't cast the Abrade there. But now it's awkward because there's an Abrade that we can cast next turn, and this Urza's Saga is coming off.
Weird game, right?
So, yeah, if you can't win this turn, you are going to lose this amulet too, and you only have one left in your deck.
Yeah.
Strange.
Weird game. I didn't expect Edward to line up 3 removal
Just
spells.
blow them all up.
Yeah, I guess
Get all the amulets.
Well, that was a really interesting turn, right? Turn 3, play the Medallion, play the Metamorphose to generate mana, play the Nature's Claim. Okay, and then said, look, the Urza Saga from John just goes and gets an Expedition map. I spotted a Grazer in hand, a Primetime in hand, but no lands. So this plan is actually working out here from Edward. Now, I don't know how you turn the corner to actually winning unless you're sitting on some wish effects or some impulse effects in hand, but pretty good job slowing the tide.
I wonder how much Edward actually valued blowing up the amulets and getting them in the graveyard, like not having them in the deck anymore. Because we could have gone Nature's Claim to Urza Saga, right? And that's still answering the same number of amulets.
True.
But now you're guaranteed an amulet exposed to Abrade this turn. Whereas now, look at the board. The Abrade doesn't have any targets. So I kind of wonder how much that was a factor in choosing to Nature's Claim the amulet itself over going after the Urza Saga, which will represent an amulet on the following turn. Uh-oh, we got the Storm counters back out. All right, here we go. We got Storm and we got red mana. We're going to start with Reckless Impulse. Finds Desperate Ritual. Finds Ren's Resolve. Okay, those are 2 big ones.
Yeah, pretty good start.
Starting on Ren's Resolve, very disciplined. If we brick on this, we don't want to use our Ritual. We did not brick. There's a Ral, and I can't get a great look at that one through the sleeve. Looks like a Mystical Archive. Past in Flames, potentially?
I'm not entirely sure. Nice and shiny sleeves just to make it a little more complicated for us, but we know that they are good draws for Edward.
Yeah, spells are good.
Yeah.
So we'll get. I think it's Grape Shot. I think Grape Shot has a Mystical Archive printing. So I'm gonna go with Grape Shot. Final answer.
I hope we find out, because I'll be honest, I have no idea.
That's okay.
That's the beauty of Magic in 2024. Everything is new.
So now we get to start flipping coins, everybody's favorite part of this deck. So we got a Ritual, we got a Grape Shot. That's 2 triggers at getting Ral Leyline Prodigy into play, not just the Monsoon Mage, and actually reaching for a kill. Doing a little bit of talking and math, are we?
Looks like these players are having a good time, right? We got smiles on both sides of the table. You're playing high stakes Magic. What more could you ask for?
I mean, I will say this has been a wild game and match so far. So, I would be having a good time too. As here comes, not clear which is the good result, which is the bad result, but here is a Grape Shot with a Storm trigger of, I believe, 3. So we got 4 damage, and we did flip Ral, maybe a little early. Not clear. No real way to kind of bank it or anything. So we got Ral Leyline Prodigy in play. 4 counters. That's not enough to just fire the -8 right away. Here we go. Yeah, we're at 6 counters, so that's tough. And maybe another fizzle from it. I mean, we have Ral Planeswalker mode in play. Get a look at this guy. Here we go. He enters with count, and we just don't load the counter on for each instant or sorcery, so we did that. Then we ticked him up, I believe. And then so now Instant sorcery costs 1 less. Doesn't really matter. Deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. Draw a card if you control a blue permanent, so that wouldn't have done anything. And then the -8 is kind of the ace in the hole. This is what you're building towards. That exile the top 8 of your library. You can cast instant sorceries from among them this turn without paying the mana cost. So that's like the big draw spell. Like you really can convert your cost reducer into a big draw spell and mana, obviously, right, if you could just get it to flip immediately -8. We didn't get to that. So now things get tough because it's going to be a while before this one's going to get 8 counters.
Yeah, this game again it just ends up in a fascinating position here. We're going to Disruptor Flute.
Disruptor Flute,
Ral
Leyline Prodigy. Okay.
Okay. Well, this is what I was going to say is it feels like a whiff from Edward's side. However, John is just doing stone nothing, except I guess playing the flute. So Ral's out of the picture for now. But literal no pressure for Edward, and we're just, I guess, we start digging through the deck and try to find cards to win eventually, and Manamorphose gets it going again, but I don't know, it's a little different with the flute out, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really, this is like the epitome of going nowhere fast. So we've interacted a lot, and I think that's typically good for John, but I mean, this graveyard is stocked, so any Past in Flames represents a ton. And I think that's more or less what Edward's building towards. But unless he finds more or less specifically that, we're kind of not really doing a whole lot. Oh, yeah. We cast the ritual. That way we get it in the yard because otherwise we would lose it to exile. We don't want to do that.
Oh, so we're just passing.
Okay. Yeah, it's literally, we're just putting it in the graveyard. That's the entire point of that.
Now we're passing back to John. What a game.
Not Radiant Fountain.
Crumbling
Vestige. Yeah. I had it. Gotta give me a second. It's been a little while.
That's a good. You've got to dig deep into the memory banks there.
Yeah, I did.
When I see one and I know, I got to be like, yeah.
Fire it off. Beat me to the punch. I'm about it. Another draw step. Is it Past in Flames or something that finds Past in Flames? Because that seems to be the moneymaker right now. Can we get a big storm going and just win with grape shots?
Is that another claim?
Another Nature's Claim. Maybe a little overloaded on interaction. I mean, they've all found targets.
We've unlocked the Ral. Ral unlocked.
Currently winning the race is plussing Ral to ultimate in this game between two of the fastest decks in Modern. Blistering speed that we're feeling here.
One player tried to go off on turn 2, didn't work. The other player won on their turn 3.
Their turn 3, I believe.
Their turn 3, possibly their turn 4. I don't remember exactly, but either way, it was very fast and impressive.
All right, we have made it. We're at 8 loyalty. Next turn is a big problem. Oh my God, Bajuka Bog.
Okay, John.
That's good.
1, 2, 3, 4 mana open. You can Bajuka Bog if you want. It might be
that'd be good if Ral was still out of the picture, because that would obviously blow up the graveyard. Passive Flames doesn't matter anymore. So there goes the graveyard. Now, there is only one Grape Shot in the main deck, but there is another one we can find off the Wishes. So doing a little bit of sorting real quick is Edward, so that we can get a good count on what's still in the deck here.
I mean, look, if he whiffs on the top, whiff is a loose term here, but like, I guess if you were to ultimate Ral at 8 and not win off of it, now you don't have a Ral anymore.
Well, now Passive Flames is a whiff, right? That's a big deal. Like, Passive Flames previously was a win the game hit, and now it's textless if you don't hit other stuff. So, I mean, that is a big change, but Ral Ultimate is still very much, a threat. That is still something very scary if you're a fan of John Wagner and the Amulet deck. Now, Arboreal Grazer adding to the mix, not a lot. Bunch of Summoner's Packs in hand for John, I believe. Really just missing that mana set off. But, I mean, he had it set up. He had 3 amulets. They all just got answered by all the interaction. And now it's all down to this Ral. Okay, we did get Thundering Falls, milled over Steam Vents. And now, we're popping the Ral right now.
Went straight for it.
And
no consideration there to try to take a turn to keep the Ral after. You just want to cash it in and try to end the game immediately.
I think so. And even like bricking is fine. Like, what if you just hit a bunch of like Ren's Resolves and find other stuff to do? Like, even if you don't find the mixture that you need right away, there's still a way to like non-deterministically find your way there with all the draws. You still get to keep a Ruby Medallion in play too. So you're still, you're in good shape. This is still pretty good for Edward. We just need to hit actual spells. And we did. Manamorphose, Glimpse number 2, and Wish. Not a lot of mana, but don't need it. Those get cast on the house from Rel.
And that will unlock basically everything because you're going to get mana off of the Manamorphose, you're going to get cards off of the Glimpses, and you're going to get whatever you want off the Wish.
Yeah, like I said, there's a little bit of sensitivity because one of your wishes does need to find Grape Shot because, again, your Grape Shot from the main deck is gone. So that is kind of your plan to victory here. But don't need to do that right away. And of course, you can flash back with like Past in Flames or something like that, the Wish, and find it that way. So don't even need it right now, but do need it. That is the end goal. As here comes a Glimpse, Ruby Medallion, and Pyretic Ritual, Glimpse number 2 on the house.
Probably don't say no to a little bit of mana here if you need. Oh, Flame of Arnor, though, and Past in
Flame of Arnor, Past in Flames, Scalding Tarn. I believe that Past in Flames is good enough. We can cast our Pyretic Ritual. We have a gajillion mana in play. We can play these Ruby Medallions probably too if you want to, at least one of them, and then flashback all your things. And then wish for Grape Shot, and that should be lethal. But I mean,
24 is a
24 is high.
So
whatever, right? Go through the motions for sure. But I think this is hard to whiff on.
Yeah, I think we're in the home stretch here. And shout out to Edward for that
Doctor Who Past in Flames, by the way. That's what that is.
Oh, the Doctor Who Past in Flames.
The promo from the release party for that one, I believe.
It's a little known fact. I'm actually allergic to any of the Universes Beyond cards.
Standard's going to be rough for you, my friend.
Oh, it's so bad. I mean, I just break out in hives. It's horrible. I mean, I just have to load up on Benadryl before playing any Standard. Anyways, yeah, like I said, this I think is more or less just kind of a formality of execution more so than anything else. Especially with a couple extra rituals really set things off, and the round didn't need to be great, and we saw it kind of wasn't. It was fine. Like you hit Wish, double Glimpse. It's not like that's the nuts or whatever, but it was good enough, I think, here to really set things off, and combined with the Ruby Medallion that was already in play. We do get to deploy a second one. I believe that one will pay for itself through the course of this combo turn, but should have far more than enough mana and going to finally get there. I mean, look, I don't know how many land drops we've missed, but just on lands alone, this is turn 7. Maybe deeper than that.
This is pretty late.
Well, strong combo decks in Modern here. Able to win the game
this
on
Storm
turn
deck,
7.
though, I have to say, like, it feels like this deck struggles in a way that Storm did not used to, right? Like, it used to just be like Goblin Electromancer, you die, right? Like, now it's like, I gotta play this I gotta play these Reckless Impulses, and I got to do all of this to keep digging to try to get there. And I guess a lot of it is that you can't just sit around and wait until turn 4 or 5 to win the game and set up for 2 turns, right? You're under a lot more pressure and you have to interact. So you just need your cards to line up a little bit better. But this is why, I mean, Storm was played at the Pro Tour pretty heavily. And I was a little concerned about it, right? Like, if you think a deck could be too strong, a Storm deck is playing Medallions is a deck that would fit that profile.
Right.
But it didn't. It basically flamed out. The story is that John Finkel was beating everybody at the Channel Fireball house with the deck beforehand. And they all said, well, if John Finkel's beating everyone with Storm, I guess we should play Storm. And the only problem is that it was John Finkel beating everyone with Storm.
Yeah.
And not a great choice for everyone else.
He beats people up with a wet noodle, so it's you're not going to register that for any major tournaments. So gotta grade on the bias a little bit. And my understanding is the deck did not do well, but I mean, something I love to see. I love me a Storm deck, and I like the Goblin Electromancer version a little bit more. The flipping coin stuff is a little in the wrong direction.
A little silly.
It's cool to see it back. I mean, really, like I said, the Elementals had pushed it out of the format entirely, and now we really see a return to form. Combos back, all these other strategies are back, and now we're really going to see kind of a classic matchup. Amulet versus Storm. It's a matchup I played a bunch, and it's got a whole facelift for both decks. And now both decks up a game. This really looks like it could be anybody's game. A lot of interaction that was present there in game 2. We saw the sideboards already. We really saw a lot of sideboard cards come into play. A lot of interaction from both players, and they're shuffling up here for game number 3. We'll go ahead and dive down into that. As this time, John Wagner with the Amulet player on your left. He's going to be on the play. So this play draw typically is the thing that matters the most. Obviously last game, kind of an anomaly, a lot of interaction, really ground the game out a little bit. And that was cool to see. I mean, those games are really fun. They're really fun to commentate. They're really fun to watch, but kind of atypical for how the matchup normally plays out. You called out kind of 2 ships passing the night. It's a lot more of what it normally is. Who can combo faster? And as a result, play draw tends to be very, very, very important for that exact reason.
Well, that was fascinating watching how much Edward interacted in that game, right? Like, the Storm deck is not the beatdown. I guess that's what I just took from that, is that the Storm deck is the control deck here, and the Amulet Titan deck is the beatdown, because all Edward did was remove John's things until he just happened to have enough cards left over to win the game, and it worked.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's so cool to see that, because really, I mean, you just answered so many things. We see a little bit of sideboarding happening here, so maybe we're pivoting off that plan a little bit, trying to be a little bit faster on the draw. I don't know. You maybe have the time on the play, but like at the end of the day, it's like, really, Edward kind of got close to running John out of amulets. Like, there's no more in the deck, and then what? Then what's your combo look like? No, obviously, I think there's copies of Spelunking, but high likelihood those are some of the first things you reach for when sideboarding out. So I think both of these players really revisiting their sideboards after game number 2 for that reason. It's like, okay, maybe I boarded out Spelunkings, but he's blowing up on my amulets. I really needed Spelunking. Now I bring this back in, and Edward can juke instead of jiving, and now take out all the answers and try to race. A little bit of play to this matchup in what your goals are, what you choose to make the game about, especially as the player on the play, and you can kind of set the pace for the game. Are you going to interact and try to kind of fight the long game, or are you going to try to just kind of beat the door down, just come out the gate swinging? So we'll see exactly what that looks like. I love the animation from these players too. Edward got a lot to say. John, a little bit more stone-faced, but he's gotten in there on the action too. These players having a lot of fun, and with so much on the line, so much at stake here, it's good when players can kind of cut loose and unwind a little bit, and just kind of play some good, wholesome Modern Magic.
You got one more game left to decide your top 8 life. You may as well have fun with it, right? Now, what's probably less fun if you're Edward is it looks like we're actually on a mold of 5 here.
Yeah, mold of 5. It looks like we're prioritizing having a game like we saw game number 1. I think I saw Nature's Claim and a Braid among the 5. So I think that Urza Saga is not going to last too long. We'll see. Do we got a stopping ground? Oh, yeah, we do. Yeah, we
now hitting this with the Nature's Claim is pretty sick, especially if the plan is to follow up with an Abrade on it. Who knows? Maybe just playing actual land destruction over here.
Yeah. It's actually, so this is actually a Ponza deck. It's a transformational sideboard. You transform into Ponza.
I loved Ponza. I loved Ponza. For people who don't know,
you're a sick person.
I did not know. I did not know when people started playing Ponza in Modern that it was a deck that existed before. Ponza essentially means a red-green mana ramp deck that also plays land destruction. And it was incredible when it had its heyday in Modern.
I don't know about incredible. It was miserable, but it was one of the decks of all time. Second land go. No cost reducer for Edward. Have to be happy to see that if you're John. Now, of course, we know that Edward kept a very interactive hand. See if that'll work 2 games in a row. Mirror Pool, I believe, into Boseiju, who endures. Found Explore. Did draw another Boseiju, and we get to pick up another one. So we have 2 Boseijus in hand, so these players kind of primed to interact with each other if it comes in the form of artifacts and enchantments. So Ral, really the card I think Edward's looking for as far as cost reducers do go. But it looks like the hand's all spells right now. Yeah, Glimpse, Unthinkables, and Wish, and Manamorphose among the mix. There's another Wish. Not really what you want to see. Kind of want to see lands and spells. Didn't find any, so we get some Eldrazi spawn for our trouble. 3 of them. And back over to John we go.
Glimpses, maybe more than anything else, one of the cards that puts this deck together and makes it work, because it keeps you going off when you have lots of mana, and it creates mana when you don't have any, which it does here for Edward. Is he gets some bodies,
right? Yeah, I mean, it does do something to set off your mana.
Yeah. It immediately progresses your game plan, even when you're not comboing, and that's important. That said, now you're Edward. You have access to 7 mana. But you did not combo, and John is just setting up an incredibly slow game of his own now. He has access to 5 mana, 6 if he untaps and has an untapped land. So maybe a Titan coming out, and it's just an instant pass back from Edward here. You're sitting on an Abrade.
Yeah, tough, because this is the turn, right? We know about a Boseiju. That's land 6. So if we have a Titan, it's on the table for the turn. And we see head in hands here for John, doing some thinking. A slow way to do it. I mean, really, we've done this off Explorers after that Urza Saga got Nature's Claim, a disaster. But Edward on a mold of 5 hasn't really been able to get anything started. Can you do anything meaningful without Amulet and a Titan this turn? I still think the answer is no. Like, you can even find the Tolaria West or whatever, but then you can't transmute right away. So we're actually going for the One Ring.
That is a pretty good one.
Dying. Yeah, not bad. Not bad.
In this, like, we're both just going back and forth, kind of holding up spells against each other. The game, the One Ring is pretty tough to top.
And there's no pressure, right? Like these Eldrazi spawns aren't beating down, so the life total ticking down from the One Ring doesn't matter, and the cards certainly do. as here comes Reckless Impulse. Going to use one of the Eldrazi to make that happen. Prioritizing the red mana. Maybe trying some kind of combo. I mean, if we can get an Empty the Warrens going, that's like something. But there is one ring, 2 lands. Okay. That's not a cost reducer. Awkward. Little flooded here is the Ruby Storm player, I believe. I mean, a lot of spells to cast. It's just, do you want to cast them?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of just, not great draws, right? Like just awkward. You said it, awkward draws. The way you've lined up the spells here from Edward's side, you still don't have an actual medallion in play to try and storm off, right? You don't have a cost reducer. You're staring down a 1 ring. Like things are in a pretty rough spot for you here. Obviously, that happens when you mulligan to 5, and then you get 0 cards off of your glimpse. All of a sudden, you're just down another card if you can't spend that mana on anything useful. It's not lined up very well for Edward here in game 3. And meanwhile, John, though, top 8 possible spot on the line here is going to untap with the 1 ring and possibly, one would assume, up to 6 mana.
Yeah, I mean, we have a ton of mana. I saw an amulet drawn, so I mean, he doesn't know about the Abrade, so that's going to come into play a little bit. But I mean, we should have do we have a Titan? I mean, that's the big question mark. Is like we got the 1 ring, we've had a bunch of looks at it. I mean, we've had forever. Yeah. So if we have a Titan, we might be good to go.
Well, and the way that if this comes up, right, the way that Amulet works is if you play Amulet, then you'll retain priority. If you're John, you can play a land. That trigger will go on the stack before Edward can even have an opportunity to abrade it. So you would still get 1 untap out of.
You get 1, yeah.
If you are able to set that line up. Now he's pretty deep in the tank though, right? Like he's got plenty of cards. He's drawn 3 off of the 1 ring alone, on top of all those explores. So he's got a lot of options. John thinking it through, and here we go. He's going to start it off with the 1 ring. Or I'm sorry,
the Titan math I feel like is pretty transparent. So it makes me wonder if we have any like aftermath analyst scape shift shenanigans that we're thinking about, because like I said, I think a lot of the amulet stuff's pretty transparent as far as what it's about and what the mathematics there looks like. Some of the other stuff I don't know if the heuristics are necessarily as fleshed out, but we chose to just go amulet pass, and now we got an in-step search for Thundering Falls, just gonna bin Wish.
This deck is famous for having one of the most complicated flow charts of any deck.
Oh, yeah. It's complicated for sure. Oh, are we not on Instep? Yeah, I guess we're not on Instep. We just did that in response to the Amulet. I don't know what we could have hit there that would have made a difference, but response to the Lotus Field untap, we're going to go ahead and abrade the Amulet, but we do still get the Lotus Field mana. So now how do we adjust to that? We got a trigger on the stack to sack some lands.
Yeah, Lotus Field trigger here. Yep. So it could be an aftermath analyst if he thinks that this produces mana for him. Now he might have been thinking they was going to do that with the Amulet of Vigor in play, but here we go. Oh, prime time. Okay.
Primeval Titan. So now, I mean, if you don't have a kill here, because I mean all your amulets keep getting blown up, a Bajuka Bog's not a 0. A Bajuka Bog could be meaningful.
Bajuka Bog does look pretty good here, I think, if you go that line, because look, Edward has done so much nothing. Edward's sitting on 3 cards in hand and plenty of mana. The scariest thing you can run into is probably a Pass in Flames at this point. So yeah, I mean, if you think that like your game's just going to be won by your Titan attacking next turn, then getting Bajuka Bog seems pretty good. And there you go, you called it. It's down.
Yeah, Bajuka Bog and I believe a Hedge Maze to go ahead and hedge for the next turn, quite literally. But also, it's a hedge. Do you get it? Do you get it? All right, I get it.
I see what you did there.
Interesting note about the current build of Amulet. No Pact Negation, something you used to see being able to transmute Tolaria West for. Don't have access to that in this list. And that's pretty meaningful in the Storm matchup specifically, being able to tag something, some critical spell. Now, maybe the answer is there is no one critical spell, but I mean, the point is there's no counter spells to be had. This Bajuka Bog really is one of the only interact with the combo turn cards in John Wagner's deck. And so over to Edward we go. Don't have a great look at what he has. He's not excited about it. And okay, it looked like he was about to pass back. Did
thinking about maybe a little bit. I think you got this one. But here we go. We're going to dig Manamorphose.
Not quite. Use Manamorphose. No cost reducer means this one doesn't make mana. It's mana neutral. Got a Pass in Flames. Pick up. Ugh, brutal.
Wow. So what a call there by John to go get that Bajuka Bog to clear that out, because otherwise that Pass in Flames off of this ritual would have enabled a whole big turn from Edward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know what the numbers look like, but it feels pretty likely to be a Manual Sturm kill. possibility.
Oh
And
my
now it's
gosh,
just,
we're gonna try hard. We're gonna get Past in Flames hard cast up front just to get this Manamorphose back and keep trying. Storm count 4.
Storm count 4. Do we have any Rowls hanging around?
I think you needed more mana.
So yeah, right back to John we go. He untaps very quickly, untapping with the One Ring and Primeval Titan. I can't imagine this game is going to go on even maybe another turn.
Yeah, there's another One Ring in hand. Obviously, he's got about 15 cards there. I think we are witnessing a win in the making and a
saw desperation from Edward,
burst.
and I think for good reason. He's not getting another turn, and he knows it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Great
Disaster.
run by Edward to this point with Ruby Storm, right? It's been one of those decks that's kind of on the ropes, it seems like, but able to run it off to a huge day here in Chicago at the NRG Championship Series. So looking he's going to come up maybe just a little short of that top 8. But John Wagner over on Amulet Titan trying to put the finishing touches on this and punch his ticket to the top 8. I see a hand where battlements.
Yeah, looks like we might just go to combat first. I don't think we can find a Titan right away. So gonna go ahead and just start laying the beat downs. And no amulet to untap any kind of double striking lands or anything like that. So kind of just thinking through what matters, I think, is
he can
John.
hit the yeah, if he's got a copy land, right?
He's got Vesuva.
That hits. Yeah, you can copy the bog, try to get rid of the graveyard.
Yeah, and then we can get Shifting Woodland, and that
Yep.
maybe insulates you against any removal spells for your Titan. You can just like make it a Titan or whatever, and then like you're covered against a lot of the stuff that Edward could even do. But I mean, like you said, like another copy of the One Ring is really gonna all but give you guaranteed another turn.
True.
And I think one more turn should be close to good enough.
That should be good. I would think, right? The nuking the graveyard, hitting that Past in Flames that was in there, probably removes Edward's last shot here. I mean, I guess technically he's trying to find like...
Yeah, there's Teleria West. That gives you a backup Titan, and then you could maybe find a way to haste it or whatever. Oh, you could turn the Woodland into an amulet in the yard, and then you have a hasted Titan next turn. But I think you actually had that anyway with the Auto-Aware Battlements. So with this One Ring giving you another turn, almost guaranteed, you got a Titan in play, a potentially hasted Titan next turn, and Edward with one card in hand. I mean, this is all but wrapped up here for John Wagner, and what I would maybe call an upset. This matchup, I think, normally in traditional heuristics, very favored for the Storm deck, typically considered a turn faster. John Wagner done a great job weathering through a very interactive game, some punishing mulligans and things like that. And we have, after this, we'll be heading to the booth, and then we'll be talking about starting to build towards our top 8, which I believe is starting to take shape here. As I remember, this is a time-shifted match. Very likely that whatever is going to happen has already happened, and the top 8 is going to be close to ready to go after all this action. Shockingly grindy match here between these two decks, and non-stop magic action for both of them. Flame of Andor, the pickup. Edward doing a quick review of the Exile Zone to see if this is maybe even a winnable game at all, but even beating the One Ring gonna be tough to do. We'll see what he has. Going to take a swing at it. I respect it. I don't know what it looks like in the face of the One Ring, but we're going to see.
You've got your last turn here on camera. You may as well enjoy it.
Sure.
We'll have to dig into our top 8, obviously, when we get there. But taking a glance at what was at the top tables over these last rounds, we're looking at a pretty diverse top 8 here in Modern.
Yeah, incredibly diverse top 8. And like I said, the story of this has been, okay, is the One Ring too strong? Does it need to be banned? Well, the answer to that might still be yes. I mean, look at all these One Ring. Even the combo decks are playing the One Ring. But as far as like the Boros Energy deck, I don't know that I'm sold. I've seen it kind of get mushed too many times today for me to be like, yeah, this is a bannable best deck. I don't know that I buy it.
I think it's I don't know if I'd call it the fun police, but it certainly seems to be policing the format.
Sure.
But that matters for people trying to play tier 2 decks, right? Like there are decks to beat it, and that's going to cause it all to kind of to spread out from there. So can Amulet Titan find a place in that with Scape
I
shifts?
hope so. I love me some Amulet Titan. I love me some Amulet.
Aftermath Analysts.
Yeah. Got some spice. Scape Shift getting back in the fray. There's an old timer. Come on. How can you not love this? How can this not be modern through and through? Even if the One Ring is a little pervasive in the format. I think the games that we've watched have looked really good. Here's Spelunking. That one's not an amulet, but does allow lands to enter on top. We know there's an amulet too from all the draws. A lot of mana left over here for John. And like I said, all roads kind of lead to Rome. How do you want to do this? is the real question, I'd say. Here comes... yeah, we can play the battlements, and then we have 6 plus red left over. So you have the red from Gruul Turf. You can give it haste. We got Vesuva. Oh, copying Bog again. Get that graveyard out of here.
Nice.
Sure.
Double Titans.
Tutor it up. All right, Lotus Field.
Those Majuka Bogs were really great, right? Like, I don't know
Extremely
if I want to
critical. And there's only one in the deck. You had to copy it in order to get a second one.
I don't know if I want to say like it straight up won John the game here, but it did come pretty close because that Pass in Flames would have really unlocked a ton of options for Edward, and it just was not an option because you can put one off-color Bajuka Bog into your deck and go get it. And this deck can copy it 3 times so that those
you should keep picking up the Vesuva, pick up the Bog, do whatever you want. You have as many Bogs as your heart desires, especially with Primeval Titans in the mix. And all these years later, it comes all right.
All right, so we got Echoing Deeps copying the Shifting Woodland.
You're copying the Woodland, okay. And
it can come into play as a copy of any land in a graveyard, I believe, if I recall.
I think we made a Lotus. No, we kept the Lotus Field. So the Lotus Field sacrificed to the Vesuva and the Simic Growth Chamber. I think we made a copy of Onward Battlements. Which
and we got another hasty Titan out here. Yep.
Okay. Oh, we have the double braid. Kill one of them. All right. We battle on.
We do, don't we?
We battle on as Primeval Titan hits the bed. I mean, we're kind of laughing, but I mean, if he can survive this turn, he's going to get a turn with no One Ring protection. And
I don't think
window.
I don't think his.
Never mind.
Just kidding.
Never mind.
This is if the One Ring does go, this is going to be why. It's exactly like Sphinx's Revelation. If people remember playing like that, they would just revelation into a bigger revelation into a bigger revelation, and the game would just fall out of reach. That's exactly what the One Ring does. It comes into play, protects you for a turn, draw a card. Then you draw 2 cards. Then you play another ring, draw a card, draw 2 cards. And it just stacks on itself, and all of a sudden they're up 5 cards in 2 turns. And that's what it does, right? That's the power of it in every single deck that plays it, whether that's an aggressive deck, whether it's a combo deck, whether that's Amulet Titan or even a mid-range deck. But all right, the game is not over. That double of braid keeps it going. Edward digging with the Manmorphose here.
Manmorphose to kick things off. I don't know what we can find again. Like I didn't really know last turn.
And Pass in Flames or something, but without extra mana.
I think if you go unbounded, maybe the answer is empty the Warrens, and you can like just put enough blockers in play that Titan won't get through, and then you can attack back. Sure. That's what I got. Either way, it was not unbounded. Edward offers the fist bump, and like I said, a little bit of an upset. John Wagner on his take of Amulet Titan. We're going to be seeing him certainly in the top 8, barring any really strange stuff. And speaking of the top 8, that is the end of round number 8. That is both of our matches. Quite a diverse top 8 it's looking to be, but we'll get a more clear look on that in just a moment. But